Hi everyone, welcome back to KoreaTalk, a mini-series within Heart2Heart Pod. This is the second episode of our series, which is about two former expats' experiences living and teaching abroad in South Korea. Today, my co-host Wes and I are going to talk about culture shock and life in Daejeon.
Yeah, thank you for bringing me back, Tina. And I think this is the first time I've been on here since Heart2Heart was official. So yeah, I'm excited to be a guest on that too. And I'm just excited to talk about our time in Korea together.
Yeah, of course. We're doing this series together, and I just want us to be able to talk our hearts out about our experiences. I know that in our first episode, we mentioned how we lived in Daejeon. Do you want to talk about it? Like, where is Daejeon and what's it like? What it is known for?
Sure. So Daejeon is like kind of the central area in Korea. So it's near all the major cities. So like you can get to Seoul in like an hour and a half or even an hour by express train. You can get to Busan, which is the second biggest city that's to the south, in like an hour and a half, 2 hours by express train. It's just central to everything, or sort of in a way the heart of Korea in a transportation sense. It's known for it has in my opinion, it has a world-class bakery. And that's when I meet Koreans and people, they always mention that place, Sungshimdam Bakery, and we're going to talk about that later. I think it's also known for being adjacent to Sejong City, which is where a lot of the government officials live now. So there's a lot of development there. So, not only is it sort of a transportation hub, but it's right next to probably the second largest contingent of government officials too. So there's a lot of resources. There's a lot of money in Daejeon. I wouldn't say it's a tourist destination, but it's a good place to live.
So thinking back, how was your first week in Daejeon, and what was your first impressions in the few months that you were living in Korea?
We all went on the bus together, all of us as expats, leaving the orientation site, and like this was really the beginning of what I wanted to do. Like all that orientation stuff was like kind of like a boot camp in a way, and now we were really starting our purpose of being in Korea, which was to teach English to students. I wanted to be in a public school because I wanted to teach English, conversational English, to underprivileged kids, or just ordinary Koreans, not just affluent ones. I wanted to provide them with a unique experience that they may not be able to have access to. So getting there, I was really excited, and I met my co-teacher at this location. When we got off the bus, we all got off this bus, and we went to this conference center. I don't know, it was pretty big, and they would kind of announce in a way us, in which school we went to, and then the co-teacher would come and meet various people, and they would bring flowers, and there'd be different reactions. There's a lot of excitement. And then I met my co-teacher, and she was she was probably around my age or a couple of years older, and she brought me flowers. And this was actually the first time I ever received flowers from anyone in my life. And I was so touched to have these flowers. And then they took me to get some lunch, and then we got my picture. I needed to get my picture taken. Not only for my alien registration card, which is like your ID as an expat, but also for my picture on the wall. So outside of the teacher's office, you have your picture with your name next to it and what your role is at the school. So they got my picture taken. However, I didn't expect all the Photoshop that was occurring.
Oh yeah.
So they made my face really bright and very slim. I looked like maybe a middle schooler again.
You look so different.
That didn't look like me, but I guess that was the ideal over there. So yeah. Then I got introduced to my apartment. I met the former teacher there for like a day. And she gave me all this information about like where to go for certain things. She had like a little laminated map, and then a laminated card that had my address on it. And it had a Hangul in Korean script, or no, an English script, but it was romanized from Hangul or Korean language. that where I lived to what to tell the taxi driver to get home. I would just read this card out, and the taxi driver would get me back to my neighborhood. So she was so accommodating, and my co-teachers were so friendly. So it was really nice in that sense. But also, you know, I never experienced this before, like this fancy of an apartment. We're gonna get into that later, but it had like, instead of a key, it had like a electric combination that you would press to get in, and then and then it had like wooden floors, and it had like a laundry room and stuff. But and then life there was just like, I don't know, just there was so much to learn. Like, where do I go to get groceries? Where do I go? Where do I go to get things? Like, I went to Daiso and got like, it's like a dollar store in Korea.
I love Daiso.
And I got
like
Daiso. Yeah. Right, it has everything you need, and it was within walking distance of my apartment. My apartment was right next to this kind of restaurant and area, and it was like a 2-minute walk to the subway. It was just a perfect location.
It was such a good area. You were so close.
I was in such a good area. So this was the nicest place I've ever lived, in my opinion. Even though it wasn't big, but it was big enough. And that was good. But it was the first time that I was somewhere without any friends. You know, we well, you're there, of course, and we were developing that, but like, not like I meant like some people I've known most of my life. Even at Mizzou, I was like just an hour and a half away. That's where I went to graduate school, University of Missouri. I was just a 90-minute drive away from my home, and my friends were there. So I still had that security blanket in a way. But over here, I had a few friends in Seoul, but they were really busy. And then my girlfriend was still in the USA. So I was completely on my own in some ways when I was in Daejeon. Because I didn't have too many contacts there. So I don't know, it was tough. Like, it was hard being the only expat in the whole school. And my birthday was pretty rough too, because everyone was busy or whatever. So I ended up kind of just wandering around the neighborhood on my birthday, and I found a chicken restaurant, and I just ordered some chicken and beer and just hung out on my own. So
wait, your birthday, was it in the beginning when you just?
It was in the beginning. Yeah, it was like,
you should have called me.
Probably. Yeah, I should have. I don't know. I was so overwhelmed. It was
that's true.
Yeah, it was just getting used to things. And we also had a very exciting opening weekend when we first got there. We went to the Dunsandong, which is the new downtown area, and we went to like they call it noraebang, but like karaoke. There was a bar, and the nightlife was amazing. And then went there with all the expats, and that was a really unique experience, and I can't forget that night, just because it was so chaotic and fun. That didn't go perfectly though, because we we kind of got separated at some point. But overall, it was I don't know, it was just kind of, if I had to summarize it all up, it was very engaging, but also a little bit challenging at the same time. There was a lot to learn, and there were so many options that it was like limitless what you could do, and you didn't know how things were going to turn out because you're not familiar with this culture, this city. You don't know what's really how things are gonna go. So I would probably describe my first time there. How about you? How was your adjustment first few weeks or months?
Okay, well, my first week in Daejeon was very memorable. As I've mentioned before, how I was sick during orientation week. I got sick because I remember in our orientation at the university, didn't have the heater on. It was really cold. When I arrived in Daejeon, I had a fever. I remember that ceremony where I met my main co-teacher, and she was really nice, and she took me to my apartment and went to a cafe and also the school. So I went there as well, got my alien card, and everything. But I remember that initial first few weeks, that month was so hard because I was sick for like a couple of weeks and I had to go visit the doctor's clinic. And even when I went to the school and she was introducing me to other teachers, I was like so out of it. I could barely walk. It was so bad. And I remember that one night I was so sick with the fever that I was curled up in bed, but my main co-teacher, she bought me porridge and she like bought me a hot drink and she was like looking out for me, right, since I didn't know anybody. But I also remember that first day when I went to my studio, I went to the elevator and I actually met someone who is now my friend. He was from England. Basically, he's another expat in the building. In that building, I was very fortunate because I had two expats in that building, and one of them is next door to me. So I'm gonna name drop. James and Fabian. They were really welcoming, and they welcomed me in Korea, and they showed me around, and even included me in their friend group. So I was very fortunate in that way because I remember like saying hi to them, and Fabian, my neighbor right next door to me, he like one day he was knocking on the door and saying, hey, like I know you're new here, because the person who I was replacing, he lived in my studio and he left, right? So then he was like inviting me to go hang out with like him and his other group of friends. So I was really fortunate to meet them because I didn't know anyone, and in that group there were people from Epic, like people from different years. So people that have been there for several years, and then there were other expats from private academies I met, and also a couple of local Koreans. So it was a good mix. I also remember that event with Epic when we went to the bar and we went to Noibang, and it was so great to attend that event because I got to meet other expats, right? And I just remember like everyone was just like drinking and partying and everything. And then I remember that time that I was still sick, right? So there were times where I thought, oh, I shouldn't have gone out because I got even more sick, you know? And then, yeah, I remember also we went to an Epic event together, and but we got separated, you know, at nighttime. And I was like, oh no, because I remember when I went with you, you were teaching me how to use the whole money card and how to get around on the subway, with the transportation and everything. I didn't know my way around, right? So then, yeah, that night I was like, oh no, Wes, I can't find him. So then I had to take the taxi home, right, in the middle of the night, and it was like really late, and I was so lost, like finding my way home. I did show the guy my card with my address in it, but then it took me to the neighborhood, and I think I walked home from that station. And then the thing was, I was also using Google Maps. There was the other Korean map that we could use, but I didn't really know to use that app. And Google Maps is not the most reliable too, right? And I didn't really know how to get my way home, but I eventually found my way home, but it was just like so overwhelming that first few weeks, I remember. Yeah. And
that sounds really challenging, being sick and then getting lost.
All these things that happen.
Like, did I send you that? Did I text you the address or something? Is that what happened?
You definitely helped me because I probably got lost getting there.
Yeah, I had that card, that laminated card from the former teacher at the middle school I was at. So that's probably why you got to the station, because that's where that took you. It was to the station, but
it was still
yeah,
like a 10-minute walk home.
I was so out of it. I think I just,
I think you
I got it. I think I fell asleep pretty soon after I got home. Yeah, that was a crazy night. Actually, though, that was the only night that whole time that I did that with expats. So that was a one and done for me. I hung out with other people, like former like Korean friends, especially. But I think that was my one and only expat experience. Which I'm glad I had, but yeah, so I'm glad I got to have that, but I guess it just, it didn't work out in that sense. to continue it. But we
Mm-hmm.
did meet a few of them for lunch later and that kind of stuff. I
Yeah.
remember, but that was the only real hardcore party we did
Okay.
together. So it was just like a flickering flame, like spark, and it was
Yeah.
gone.
I think we all had very different experiences. I definitely remember also, just because it was my first time stepping foot in Asia when I came to Korea, I was mesmerized by everything. Everything was new. Every day was an adventure, a challenge. I was constantly outside of my comfort zone. And as I'm sure everyone else was too, and just growing so much in such a short period of time. And I wanted to stay longer. I definitely did. Because just having experienced so many first things, I was in the honeymoon phase, right? And there was a little bit of homesickness later on in terms of just how different the culture is and the language barrier, especially at school, having to communicate with the co-teachers and our students. But other than that, I definitely say that at least in the first few months, or even throughout the whole year, I felt like I was never been so in love with a place before. Yeah, like how is your studio?
was like was interesting. So it was across from it was kind of a restaurant area and like a not the main strip, but like a side one. So on the side, so there was like a Chinese restaurant right next to me, and across was like a pub and a Chinese
Oh
like
yeah.
barbecue place that you
Uh-huh.
could like they'd have so like there were people that would go outside these areas and smoke and talk. So it
Mm-hmm.
was always noisy at night. But and then I had the apartment itself. I think it was like on the second floor, and I could, or maybe third, I think second, and it was pretty secure. You needed a key to get in. Um, it wasn't the first floor. It was very clean. And you had a nice little window view of the alley. So there was that. It had a TV. It came with like a nice TV, like HD
Mm-hmm.
TV. I wasn't expecting that. Just I didn't have to buy a TV. It was right there, and it was decent. So,
Did you watch
and then
TV?
oh yeah, well, so I brought a Chromecast, so I could watch YouTube on it. And then I watched a little bit of Korean TV because they have an English channel called Aryong, and it's all about K-pop. And I love K-pop, so I watched that channel. I had my laptop with me. I had plenty to do. Yeah, it was big enough for me. It was like it's called the Office Tel, so it's like a studio.
Mm.
And then it has a laundry room in it, and in the laundry room you have a washer, no dryer, no dryer.
Mm-hmm.
You hang your clothes and on a clothesline inside the washing machine area in the laundry room, and then yeah, I'd hang clothes there. The bathroom was interesting. So
Yeah, that was so interesting.
the sink, the sink had a shower head connected to it, and there was a drain where the water would go in. So you had to like
Mm-hmm.
hold it with one hand, I guess, and then like put the shampoo in or whatever. So it was, it got the job done, but the drain, I don't know. I'm fairly, I don't know. I'm kind of fairly hairy individual, so I had
Okay.
to make sure to clean the drain all the time because
Yeah.
it could get clogged, and then that's no good. So I don't know. I wish it would have been nice if it would have had an actual tub to catch the water in.
Mm.
Because yeah, it would just catch on there, and it was hard to keep the bathroom floor dry enough that way it wouldn't, create mold or mildew or
Mm-hmm.
that sort of thing. So that was something that was a concern. Um, I did not have paper thin walls like I heard some people had.
Oh,
I rarely heard anyone. It
that's
was so
good.
quiet.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
good.
it might have been newer, but yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you could maybe hear like noise like from the bathroom area because it's thinner the way that's designed, so you could hear like someone turn the shower on or whatever, but like not often. It was pretty quiet overall from the inside. Although I do remember one time I actually heard I heard a commotion going outside, and there was this arguing that was going on and screaming and all that stuff. And I was like, what is going on? So after a couple of minutes, I went outside, and there was like a dispute going on right outside in that alley out there. And I think they lived in my building, and all like the whole apartment basically was out there like kind of checking out this situation. And I think eventually the police came or something, but it was pretty crazy because yeah, it's such a quiet area most of the time when it comes to that sort of thing. But then that one time, it was quite something I didn't expect. And I also didn't know what to do because as an expat, what are your rights, to get involved in these things? If something escalates, do you get all the blame? It's hard to know what would happen. So that's something that is always hard because you want to do something, but you're so limited in your communication and your knowledge of the norms and the law that so that was tough too. But food wise, I pretty much I could order delivery into this place by using an app. I used an app, and then they would call me because I had my address in it. And the only time I ever used that phone was when a delivery person came and called me and said they were there. And I went down the stairs and I met them, and I got the food, and so that was nice. I got like Domino's, I got chicken.
How we were talking how I never learned how to use the app for delivery, and I never got food delivered over. You
could have asked me, I would have helped you.
I just never bothered with it. Yeah.
I don't know who taught me, if it was my co-teacher or just like online, maybe. I know there's a couple of Facebook groups for expats in Korea. It was probably one of those two things. Yeah. So how was your place? What was your place like?
Okay, well, I definitely felt that the studio was very small. But of course, can't expect anything much from it since, they provide accommodation. Epic provides that for us. So then it's just like a small place, but it has everything I really need, right? Like a bed, the desk, wardrobe, and the TV, which I didn't watch TV. And then there was that kitchen. It's like really small, but it's okay. Like it was okay. I would have to say that the person who lived there before me, he actually left a lot of things in the studio, like kitchen.
Mine did too. Did too.
Okay. Yeah.
But like, mine left way too many things. Like they should have been cleaned out more. In some ways it's good, but there was junk too that I just threw out.
I think I had that too. Yeah. So then I had like a lot of things there, which was good. I didn't have to buy too much new things. And yeah, the washroom, the toilet, it was definitely one of the biggest culture shocks, right? How with the sink and the shower, they're connected and share the same pipe, and there's like no dividers between the sink, the shower, or the toilet. So that I remember there were instances where I'm trying to brush my teeth and I turned the wrong knob, and then it's like the shower head, right? And I get sprayed with water, which is funny, but it's always so interesting. And I don't know if it was our toilets, but how in Korea there's a lot of toilets, they have a lot of different functions. They have buttons to wash yourself with.
Oh, like a bidet. Yeah. Mine didn't have that.
Music?
Did yours?
No, mine didn't have it. Music. But like other, like I guess cafes and other places in Korea, they have like really interesting toilets. Very interesting toilets.
They do.
And well, I do have to say, well, this is a culture shock experience, but our floors, the heated floors, Ondo.
Oh, yeah.
It was so amazing because, like, especially during winter time when you're cold, I just lie on the floor. And
you don't have to worry about like the central heating. Central heating. In my opinion, most people get sick at the beginning when they turn the heaters on because the stuff collects in the furnace or however, and people get sick from that. But with Undul, it just comes from the floor, and you don't get anything in your lungs from that. So I really, you just can just lay down and warm up. So for those that are able to do so, I prefer that as a warming mechanism, just because it works really well. I didn't think it
Yeah.
would, but it's so different. But I'm like, man, why don't they
I
do
miss
this
that.
everywhere?
I miss
This is
that.
really smart. This is really smart. Yeah,
Yeah.
I couldn't believe, like, in this apartment, the literally ground would get warm. Like, yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know if how extensive it is in every apartment. I think it's kind of it depends on the apartment.
Mm.
Historically, it was a lot more rudimentary. Like, it would come in different ways, but this was electronic based, I believe, or it could have been gas, but it was it was a little higher end, and you could even dry clothes on it too.
Yeah, exactly. That's
I
what a lot of people
I put
said they
my
would do.
jeans on there since there was
Yeah, like to dry your clothes since there's no
Mhm.
dryer. We have a lot to share in terms of our culture shock experiences.
Yeah, we do. So when I was in Seoul, there was a lot more English available in the signage and amongst people compared to Daejeon. I don't know why, but it it was just noticeable that I had to use a lot more Korean when I was in Daejeon. So that led to
Mm.
it's a good thing, I think, to get me a little beyond complete beginner to beginner. But that would also lead to a lot of more challenges and navigating basic things, like, having to remember how to ask where's the restroom, or ordering food. Or I remember when we went out the first time, we went to have lunch and the entire menu was in Korean, and
Mm-hmm.
that never happened in Seoul for me. There was always some English on the menu, but in Daejeon, completely Korean, and we did not know our food vocabulary at that point. So
Yeah,
so we were really in trouble. Although I could read it, I didn't know what it was. So
that's true.
so I could read it out loud and they would give it to me, but it could have been anything. And then some of us couldn't even read Korean at all. So
Oh
imagine what they would
yeah.
do. So I was
We
fortunate enough to be able to read it, but not understand it. So that was a lot.
Yeah, and
Just the
also
la-
a lot of us
Mhm.
we use the Google Translate app just to
Yeah.
translate the Korean words.
Well, they had a menu reader. You could put it on the menu, and it would give you a general idea what it was. That was good. But also, you had to know how to ask them in Korean what you wanted. So if you could
Mm-hmm.
learn one word in Korean, I recommend you learning or this phrase, "주세요," which means "please
Yeah,
give me."
I was thinking
I
that
would like
too.
this.
That
So
was
you
like
could you could even say
the one thing I learned.
you could say, like, chicken juiceo, they'll bring you chicken, try to say it with their intonation. But yeah, like, that was so useful. And I could do it confidently. And since I could read Korean and they had a picture, then I could easily order. So I think just knowing that if you're not in Seoul, you should definitely know how to read the alphabet in Hangul, and you should know
Mm-hmm.
some basic vocabulary. Learn food, learn, like,
Very
um,
basic, like.
the real basic things.
Mm-hmm.
But that way, and learn Juseo, and then you should be
Yes.
good. You'll be able to
Yeah.
eat. To be able to eat, right, is important. You get by in other ways. But yeah, I should have thought about that even beforehand, but it was just so much going on. And yeah, I didn't think about that until it was, and then I had to figure it out, and that's the thing. When I was in my school, that the teachers, when we were together in the elevator, would be, when they all knew English, they would still speak Korean to each other. And I
Mm.
felt like, yes, this is your country and you're native, but what, like, you all know English, so it felt like it kind of excluded me. Initially, I felt that way.
Mm-hmm. But we all feel that way.
But then
Yeah.
later, I'm like, well, wait a minute. This is their country. This is their
Exactly.
native language. I could have
Yeah.
learned some Korean, so it's not really
Mm-hmm.
their responsibility. But at the
Exactly.
time, I felt a little bit disheartening just because uh, I wanted to be included. I wanted to know what was going on, and that, you know, they're probably just talking to each other, but that,
Normally. Yeah.
like normal people do in
Yeah.
their
Like
country and
normal
their native
life.
English.
Living their
So,
normal
which is
life.
fine. Yeah. Honestly, they were fine. And I shouldn't expect them to translate to me either, because that's not their job.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, initially it was a little bit tough, probably just because I was feeling a bit lonely and I just really wanted to be included and involved. And I just wish that I knew just a little bit more Korean. It would have made my transition a little bit better. But I am happy that I at least knew how to read it and I had a little bit of a foundation that kind of grew and, and from there, and I was able to do fairly well, just knowing what was going on at the very least. But yeah, that's for my language barrier. How about with you and language barriers? What was your Korean when you first
Oh my
started? Where was
gosh.
it?
Well, I did take a couple of classes, Korean classes, before I came to Korea, and then there was that couple of classes during orientation week, but I basically came knowing nothing. And it was
Could you read
definitely
it?
like, oh yeah, I learned a little bit. So I did learn to read it. But I just remember for sure language barrier was the most difficult thing for the whole year because you just want to be able to interact with your co-teachers and your students and be close with them, but there is that language barrier, and it's really up to you to learn the language and engage with them. And even for myself, I wish that I took more time or put more effort in learning Korean because I did go to Korean class. Yes, I did do that for one semester. However, I didn't really learn as much as I would have liked. I remember, in the office when all the teachers would come together during break time and they would be all like, socializing and laughing, and I didn't know what they were talking about, right? And I did have my main co-teacher. She was nice enough to like translate to me sometimes, like try to tell me. It was really nice of her. Like she didn't have to do that, right? Because it's like so much work for her to like socialize with other teachers and then translate to me too, right? But she always tried to include me. They always try to include me as well. But of course, it's always hard because like you do feel but isolated. And again, like you are the foreigner in another person's country, right? So they shouldn't have to accommodate to you, but you do want to learn and adapt to their culture and their lifestyle, right?
That's very true. And
Yeah.
it's hard because we all have our own country's social norms. And in
Mm-hmm.
America, it's very rude to speak in the language that everyone doesn't understand.
Mm-hmm.
So, obviously you're in another country, they should accommodate you, but that still is ingrained in you and you have to fight it. I had to fight it because I'm like, hey, this isn't my country and they have their
Yeah.
own norms. But
And
that was
yeah.
something that on a bad day, combine that social norm with that situation, that would be enough to irritate me sometimes.
Even though like they might know a little bit of English, they're not as fluent, right? So
Right,
of
right.
course
Yeah, yeah, they're not.
of course they're gonna speak in Korean in their own language.
Their own
But
workspace and
yeah.
yeah,
And I
for sure.
remember even in my office, it wasn't just the co-teachers that I worked with. It was also the gym teachers, and they don't speak any
Mm.
English, right? But then they're all really kind to me though. But
Oh,
yeah,
you're
yeah,
saying
that was
mine actually, my gym teachers were really good at English for some reason. I don't know, for
oh,
some
they
reason
were
I
really
was
good.
I didn't expect because it wasn't their
Uh-huh.
focus, but they were quite competent. And yeah, I think we'll get into more about that
Yeah.
later. Culture barrier, not knowing what's like polite or rude is the
Mhm.
hardest thing because you want to
Right.
make a good impression and you want to express to them that you respect them and you respect their culture and that you like them. But sometimes what you think could be a good thing is actually rude in another culture.
Yeah,
So it's
exactly.
like when someone offers you something, saying yes to it the first time, technically you're not supposed to do that. Table manners, bowing, when to bow, when not to bow. There's so many things. So I
Mhm.
think combining that language barrier with culture barrier is challenging. I always felt like, I've been around Koreans now since 2010, I'd say 2011. So I'm like, I have like, the social skills still of a child in Korea's context,
Yeah. Mhm.
compared to just because you didn't live in that culture, you weren't raised in that culture. So there's so many mistakes that can be made that I really appreciate the patience of my co my co-teachers and my co-workers to understand, that I don't know these things and I'm just doing my best. I think this was introduced orientation, but
So you
I
did?
guess there's
Yeah.
a rumor that if you're in an enclosed space with the fan on, like an electric fan that's on, and your doors shut, your windows are closed, that you'll suffocate overnight. So that is fan death. So I thought it was a joke. I didn't think it was real serious. But I eventually in the summer I got really hot, so I had to buy a fan. I had to buy an electric fan, and in that it had the manual of what to do, and there's symbols on there, and there was literally a symbol of fan death like could occur. So there was like an X on like the room closed with the windows, and like it was an X. Like, don't do this. Yeah, you could die. So it's literally on the manual of the electric fans. Fan death. Fan death is a thing.
Yeah, like when I first heard about the story in orientation, we all thought that was like so interesting and like so amusing. But then we're like, oh, this is like an actual thing. But yeah, like another culture shock experience, I would say, is just in terms of how we were approached by local Koreans. So for me, I had some people randomly on the streets come up to me and ask me where you're from. Or there would be people who maybe at a restaurant, they would talk to me in Korean. They think I'm Korean, right? But a lot of times, so this is how I went through the year when something like this happens. I would do a big X sign arm gesture. Yes. And I actually realized I didn't know how to say, I don't know how to speak Korean in Korean. I never really learned that. So this is me going around doing the X sign every time like someone talks to me in Korean, like some random person comes up to me. A lot of times I'm just like shaking my head like I don't know how to speak Korean. Or like I'll be
interesting
saying like very basic Korean and then they can just tell. I would hesitate and then they would know. They're like, oh, you're not Korean. So that's kind of how my experience was, where sometimes they would just look at me and know that I'm not Korean, and then other times they might think I am, but they would just tell when I hesitate.
Did you ever end up meeting someone in this random encounter and end up actually meeting them afterwards?
Oh, yes.
As a second time?
Yes. So, I mean, I have a couple of other encounters, which I'll talk about later, but I guess there was this one story of how both of us
we met
these two local Koreans on the subway. And it was actually the day of Halloween. I was an alien from Toy Story. But anyways, so I just remember.
I don't know if it was Toy Story or what it was, but
Toy Story.
I mean, you thought, but I don't know.
What do you mean? I made that headband.
I'm not sure how close you were to the original vision, but
so great. Anyway, we were hanging out, and then I came to the washroom, and then you were talking to these two Korean.
They were like probably our age or a little bit younger. They just approached me while I was waiting for you, and I don't generally like talking to strangers, but I was just being polite, and then you came out. And then I think you kind of they started talking to us. I never talked to them again afterwards, but you had a different outcome, right?
I guess that time we ended up exchanging numbers, and then they did message me after, and then they're like, the girl was like, I would like, let's like hang out and stuff, and then I was like, oh, okay. So I did end up meeting those two for dinner one time, and it was nice, just like talking and everything. I guess they were interested to know about my experience like living in Korea and also like learning English, that sort of thing too, although their English was pretty good. And it was nice because the girl, after dinner, she was like, oh, I'll treat because I'm older. And then afterwards, but then she had to go see her mom. So it was just like me and that guy, and we were just like walking, and then but we went home. And afterwards, like they continued talking to me. But then I think it was also because this time, I remember it was only a couple of months before the end of our contract with Epic, right?
Mm.
So then I knew like I was leaving in a few months. Remember, like they wanted to hang out more, but I guess I didn't really make that much effort to keep in touch with them or really talk to them or even meet up with them again after that time because I thought, oh, I should like meet up with them again. And let them know I'm leaving kind of thing, right? Or keep in touch with them. But I didn't, I think it's also because I felt like, oh, I'm leaving anyway. And at that time, I honestly did not think that I would ever go back to Korea. Yeah, but
And I didn't even get invited to dinner. So I feel a little bit hurt. I didn't know it went that far. Man.
No, I didn't go
That's
far.
okay. I made some friends from just random encounters. So I made a friend at a PC Bong, which is a PC room. PC rooms are like internet cafes, but they're so amazing. The internet is like 1 gigabyte speed. It's like these brand new computers. They're clean. They're like you can play any game you want on there or watch live streaming services. Anything you can think of. And there's snacks there. And the best part, it was $1 an hour. I was
$1 an hour? I didn't know that.
It's $1 an hour, and you get this supercomputer and then air conditioning. It's very comfortable.
People like sleep all night, right? Did you ever?
Yeah.
Did you ever sleep overnight?
I don't know if they'd let you sleep there or not, but
really? Okay.
probably wouldn't let you. Yeah, I mean, probably not, but they'd probably kick you out. But if you I guess if you played the games all night, you could stay there.
Did you eat the food? How was the food?
So it actually came with free iced Americano. They gave it as a service. What? So not only was it $1 an hour, but they gave me free coffee.
Why did you invite me?
The thing is, it was really hard to play games on there as a foreigner. Like, it was not easy to figure out how to play games. So I just went in there to just watch some YouTube and some live streaming and that kind of stuff. But while I was there, I was having trouble getting registered to get my time there. So I asked the worker, like the attendant there, and he helped me. And then we ended up talking while I was staying there, and he would just come by and we talked a bit. He noticed I was watching a K-pop girl video because Twice just came out with a brand new song, and he liked them too. So we talked about that, and then we ended up just becoming friends, and we met probably maybe 3 times at the very least until he stopped working at that PC room, PC Bong. So when he was working there, it was pretty convenient for us to meet up before or after his shift. So for the first several months, we met, maybe 3 or 4 times and had a good time together. We had chicken. I even have a picture on my KoreaTalk of him and I taking a picture together.
You guys had a connection. For sure.
We did. Yeah, I kind of wish he would have communicated more after he stopped working there, but that's okay. Even though it wasn't very long, we got along really well and
memories.
Had a good memory. I don't even remember his name anymore though. I feel so bad, but I've never been very good with names though. But I would recognize his face if it was similar. And he was my first like friend that I made on my own in Korea. Yeah, no other introductions, just completely random. And then we're gonna get into more about how to make friends later. Yeah. But that was a local one.
Wow.
And then I also met someone at a bakery. This guy at a bakery. He was super friendly, and he just started talking to me in English. And then we shared cacao, and then he ended up inviting me to his church. So I went to Korean church for expats, and I met some expats there. Wow. But he wasn't there, and he didn't greet me or anything. So I just ended up going there like maybe 2 times and then not going back. But I think they were just trying to recruit for their church. So it was fine though. They were nice, and they gave me an opportunity to experience what it was like to go to a church in Korea and stuff. So that was fun. I won't go into much detail into that right now. That could become a thing later. But yeah, those were my random encounters. And then I did have a couple people approach me and try to speak English with me, but maybe just twice. Overall, I felt
They
like the
ask
people in
you.
Daejeon
Oh,
just
sorry.
started talking with me. But
Mm-hmm.
I think overall, I would say the people in Daejeon were a lot shyer than Busan or Seoul. Based on how
Oh,
long I was there, I did
yeah.
not have many encounters. And the guy that was in the PC Bong was from Busan. He was not from Daejeon.
Oh, oh,
So
really?
when it comes to making an actual Daejeon friend, just by random, I don't think it. I don't even know. I don't even think the church guy was from Daejeon. I think he was from Busan too. So
Mhm.
I don't know. It just seemed
Uh-huh.
like the culture there was a little bit less outgoing in that sense.
Okay.
Uh,
I have a
yeah,
question.
so I didn't meet that many.
Yeah, because I feel like, well, I don't know, what was your experience like? Because, well, being in Korea, I feel like just from parents that it's more evident that you're not Korean, right? So then do you feel that you get approached by a number of Koreans that will maybe come to you and ask you, oh, where you're from, or greet
Yeah,
you?
I would get approached sometimes just by like older men. They're called ajushis.
Mm-hmm.
The guys in their 40s, 50s, 60s, they'd come up. And then, there would be there was a few times where a few girls just approached me too out of
Mm-hmm.
curiosity that were around my age.
Mm-hmm.
Or on the train. Just talked a bit with them, but yeah, overall, I felt like Daejeon people mostly respected my privacy, and
Mm-hmm.
they were very yeah, pretty quiet or polite. Not as talkative as like when I was in Seoul or in uh, in Busan, because like when I was in Seoul, one time I didn't know how subways worked, so you had to get off the subway at a certain stop, or because it would
Mm-hmm.
just go back to where it went, or it would just stop there, and I didn't know to get off, and they literally like helped me get off the train like when I was there a few years back, like when I was 21 or whatever. They were like get off, you have to get off, and they were so, yeah. But in Daejeon it was just like I don't think they would have said anything. Like I don't think so. So the city had a different feel to it. It just felt like in general people were a little bit shyer than in the major cities. Like
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have as many random encounters as I expected.
Mm-hmm.
For how long I was there,
Right.
I was really surprised. Um, Now I did meet people and I used other methods, but when it
Mm-hmm.
came to like random encounters, I didn't have a whole lot. I had a couple of good ones, but overall, I guess it was easier to meet people in Daejeon if it were in a more structured environment.
And then even thinking about experiences being approached by strangers, right? I had a couple of encounters where there is the cults. Like the people,
Really?
yeah, like a couple, it's like randomly they on the streets, they follow you, and I think they try to get me to go to a church or temple, and just talking to me, but I'm always in a rush, so I'm always like, so just like walking by and everything. But I've had someone follow me before on the street. Did you have that experience or anything like that?
I only had that situation when I studied abroad there for a summer, my
Mm-hmm.
summertime in Seoul, and I was in Samsung-dong, and I waited there a long time, and I had two, I think, Jehovah Witness maybe people. They just kind of asked me some questions, but nothing very serious. They were fine. So
Yeah,
they said they were trying to get you to. So who was following you? Did you ever? Was it one of the temple people, or was it? You had
yeah,
no idea who they? Oh,
temple
okay.
people. Someone tried to get
Oh,
me to
okay.
go
I
to
thought it was like
temple.
some crazy, like stalker or something. I was a little bit
No,
concerned.
I
Uh,
felt generally, I would have to say, I felt pretty safe, especially as a woman traveling in Korea and traveling, even having coming home at nighttime by myself and everything. I felt safe.
yeah, that's
Mm-hmm.
good. Didn't have any weird or aggressive or experiences towards me while I was out and about in Korea, which was really nice because I was out fairly often, especially in Seoul. And overall, I think that wasn't too bad. For a culture shock on some things that were quite interesting, I know we were going to talk about while we couldn't drive, it was hard to miss the creative parking situations
Yeah.
that were in Korea. So, we have these big cities that don't have a whole lot of parking garages outside of grocery stores, right, or department stores. So there's all these alleys everywhere. And Korea is very mountainous, so people would literally park pretty much anywhere they could, any little
Yeah.
nook and cranny, right? You'd find a car there.
Everywhere,
People would
like,
even, yeah,
yeah.
drive everywhere too, right?
Yeah.
Like you have the busiest areas of the city, like Dinsandong, and there would literally be someone trying to drive a car through there when there's like hundreds of people walking along this path. You would find cars parked there. So different.
Yeah.
Like this would be illegal, and your car would get towed in the USA.
Exactly. Yeah, in
So
Canada too.
yeah,
I think that was definitely one of the biggest culture shocks. And I think also like they just didn't have enough parking lots and spaces for cars. And I noticed, like you said, how they parked everywhere, right? So then
yep.
I noticed how one time I was with my co-teacher, and I think she drove me to the clinic because to see the doctor for a doctor's appointment. And then she parked in one spot, and then when we came out, there was a car parked behind her car, right? So that it's just so normal to see like cars parked behind another car, right? And then, but then I noticed that they would have a card on the front of the windshield with their phone number, right? So then, because that car was blocking my co-teacher's car, so she had to call a number to get that person to come out to drive the car out, right? So like, yeah, I was like, whoa, this is so interesting, right? Like, I would be so annoyed if this happened, and back home, I have to do that every time, right? And then just seeing how they park everywhere diagonally and driving through crowds, as you mentioned, and also just in general, I felt like their driving wasn't very safe for me personally. Like,
Right.
yeah, I thought it was kind of dangerous, or there
Now
wasn't
through
like,
the yeah.
there's like no stop signs, and
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I've also witnessed a couple of car accidents too. Wow.
Oh, you did? Oh my
Yeah,
gosh,
yeah.
scary.
So that was
Yeah,
scary.
I wanted to clarify real quick the driving through crowds thing. So, basically, what happened is, you would have areas that people were walking to go to various outlets or stores or restaurants, and it would be littered with people like shoulder to shoulder. Say it's at nighttime and everyone's going out, and there's no street. It's just like the sidewalk, or it's for pedestrians, and there'd literally be a car just there, just driving through it very slowly, just
Slowly.
going.
I would be annoyed too as the pedestrian and the driver, or the driver.
Yeah, and I just didn't understand. I felt like this should be a no car zone. Like, why
Yeah.
you have a car here? This is for people. This is not for cars. I'm not talking about trucks for food. Literally, just personal vehicles. People thought it was a good idea to drive through. Imagine a car just driving slowly through Times Square. Like, doesn't make sense. And that's what you would see
I think
sometimes.
even like taxi drivers too, right? Like when everyone's out partying at nighttime, and then like there's all these like taxi cars.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I understand people trying to get home, and it didn't happen very often, but for the most part, it just looked like personal vehicles, or just and some taxi drivers too. But yeah, people would drive through red lights quite often at the four-way, so you had to be really careful crossing the street because someone might be in a hurry, and they might run a red light. So you had to always be careful in that. And so yeah, that is why I decided I will not drive in this country. I'll take a taxi, I will take a bus, I'll take a subway.
Yeah.
But I will
Transportation
not.
is great.
Yeah, transportation is great. It's like $1 and change, American dollar, to go somewhere. Except for taxis is a little bit more, but
Still not
yeah.
bad.
So why would I risk my life when it's so cheap and fast to just take public transportation, and safe as well, because it's clean and so how did you get any exercise in Korea? I know you were mentioning something about the outdoor exercising things that were interesting. What were those?
So
What did you think about those?
I'll talk about like there's like two culture shock experiences. One was when we go to a park, there's outdoor exercise equipment. So I thought that was really interesting. I think they probably have in other countries in Asia, but again, it was like my first experience in Asia. So I was like, whoa, this is so cool. They have outdoor equipment where I can just like exercise outside.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then another experience I would like to talk about is, so I did get a yoga membership in Korea and was probably not the smartest idea just because, you know, the class is in Korean. So when I try to do the poses, the yoga poses, I'm always trying to straining my neck, trying to look to see what the instructor is doing. And then they don't take breaks. Everyone in Korea just seems to be so healthy and fit. In the class, everyone was like very flexible and nobody took breaks. They didn't have a water bottle with them. They didn't drink water. And I'm just like, you know, doing my own thing.
Oh my gosh. So, okay. So this was probably the biggest culture shock to me.
Mm-hmm.
So it's different for every apartment complex, I'm sure. But for where I lived, not a bad area. You know, 2-minute walk from the subway. Restaurants everywhere. Pretty nice. Not upscale, but nice. There was no dumpster. We put our trash in a like circle not far outside the entrance area. There was just a designated spot where people would put their garbage, and they put bags of trash, no trash barrel, literal just sacks of garbage, and they put it, and then once a week the trash collector would come get the trash. And yeah, it smelled bad, and it wasn't sanitary at all. And I was just like, what? How is this acceptable? And in the it was almost impossible to find a trash can outside. There's like none, literally none, in this popular area where people would eat and drink and there's a convenience store there, and there were like no outdoor trash cans. So people would just leave their trash outside in little areas to be collected by city workers later. And I'm like, how is this a good idea? I know, why is the trash? It is so yeah, Korean homes typically very clean, and they are very well groomed and very, very take showers every day, all that stuff. But the actual amount of garbage outside was very, I'd never seen anything like it. And I just didn't make sense based on how clean they were personally and in their home. But then outside, it was just a garbage dump out there. Very dirty. Now there were areas that had like if it's indoors, there were trash cans typically, like in the subways, but in that space, I was just like, I can't believe this. Yeah, I was very frustrated. And the food waste, you had to so in America, we just put everything pretty much in a garbage bin, and then they sort it themselves, or you can put it in a recyclable box. Very simplistic, and except like maybe in California or something where it's more robust recycling. So I was used to just putting it in a trash sack, tying it up, putting it in a trash can, good to go. Here, you're supposed to separate things based on what they were, and then
so complicated.
Yeah, very complicated. Or you can pay extra for a trash sack that you can put more things in. It wasn't cheap though, but you could do that. But you still had to put your food waste in its own container, its own bin. So I would buy this red bucket that you're supposed to put your food waste in.
Yeah.
And it was not cheap. And I did it, but every week or two, it would disappear. Someone took it. So there's $20 down the drain. Yes.
What?
So there's $20 down the drain when I'm just trying to keep my apartment clean, So
I had to buy it multiple times.
Multiple times. I probably bought it 6 times at least.
Wow.
Yeah. Eventually I gave up, and I just started putting it in the green bag, the catch-all green bag, because I was tired of paying all this money for it. Yeah, I didn't want to do it because I felt all this pressure of, I'm the foreigner here. I need to set an example.
Yeah.
for where I'm from, I don't want, so that kind of thing.
Yeah, it was
So
really complicated.
yeah, it was
Like
really complicated.
the garbage can system, I think we all kind of we tried our best. We did what we
Yeah, we
could.
tried our best.
Uh-huh.
You wouldn't believe what the prior teacher would do. She told me that she would cut the food waste up into small bits and flush it down the toilet. That's what
What?
she did. Yeah.
Is that?
She literally would cut it up and then flush it. I didn't think that was a good idea. I don't think. Yeah, I thought she was a bit eccentric. So I'm like, I'm not doing that.
Okay.
But I wasted some. Yeah, I was like, I'm just gonna buy the big green sacks, and
Yeah.
I probably spent quite a bit of money on cleaning things because of that.
Right.
Like, it was not cheap. Like, I think it was $4 for a big one, or like it was pretty expensive. Yeah, it was like you could buy a box of trash. Yeah, I won't go about it all day, but I will say that was, if you want to keep your place clean, it's not easy because you have to know also what's the name of that bag, the catch-all, and so in the catch-all bag you can put almost anything into. You have to know what it's called, and it doesn't come automatically, so you had to buy it. So that was a challenge for me because you're in a relatively small place. You cannot let that trash accumulate, and then it's not easy to figure out where to buy it, where to put your trash, that kind of stuff. So that's something I didn't expect. I just thought it'd be like America. You put trash in this one sack and you put it in a trash can, you're done. But no, it was a whole ordeal. So talking about this now, I think this is one of the most frustrating things I dealt with.
It was very frustrating. Like the whole garbage can situation, that was for sure one of the biggest culture shocks. And I want to add on to what you have said earlier too. Something that was so interesting to me was, how, say, we go to City Hall, Daejeon, and the nightlife, first of all, I have to say, is so lively. It is so fun. People stay up all night and party till like 6 a.m. in the morning. There's restaurants and convenience stores open, and stores, and even people just drinking outside, holding their soju bottles and smoking, and karaoke bars, clubs, all that is open. There's a lot of loud music, and there's a lot of litter on the floor. And I was really surprised because a lot of them are like advertisements too, right? Just like on the floor and other random litter. And next day, everything is so clean. Daytime, all the litter is cleaned up, sparkly clean, and there's no garbage can around too. So I'm like, wow, how do they do that? Like party it up, and then next day, like, they clean it up so fast. So,
yeah, they did.
Yeah,
of course, we've never been out there in the morning to see what that was like.
Yeah,
We probably were home sleeping, so we didn't see it. Oh, I did take my friend out there from Busan one time, and he said it was a hot place. He was really impressed with Dong and how lively it was.
Yeah.
So I did return there a couple times. It is very impressive. Like,
It is.
they say, oh, Daejeon, it's just for families. There's nothing to do there. No, go to Dong and you will see. And it is big. It is not like a neighborhood. It is spread out. Like, it is a massive place where you could spend probably months exploring. Now, there's an area where we went to that really, I think, is the heart of it or the core of it, but there's still all these other areas to explore. Dong, it's a very modern and very much a nightlife district. Like, coming from a small town, I was just overwhelmed with the options and there's different like events and activities and street games and all kinds of stuff. But it did get really dirty for sure. And some of the advertisements actually had pictures of women on it. So I think there was a bit of something going on there too. Yeah, I didn't pick one up though. Not saying I could tell you could see it from a distance.
I was thinking like how like they would party so late, right? Like till really early in the morning, and even like in Toronto, the clubs open till like 3 a.m. and then a lot of restaurants and clubs they close pretty early. It's so different, like so much more lively in Daejeon and in Seoul and Korea.
I feel like a night culture, like in the mornings, I notice there's typically very little activity. There's not many people out, especially if they're not going to work. Like on a Saturday morning or a Sunday morning, it's dead. But at night, so alive. So yeah,
people work hard. And then they party hard at night.
A lot of my Korean friends stay up late. There are morning people, of course, but I'm just saying as a culture, and I'm a night person too. So for me, it really felt natural to go out and do things in the evening.
Would you say that also restaurants, they open pretty late in the afternoon?
Oh yeah, restaurants are open late. If you're going out with friends, you don't have to worry about it being closed after it's a reasonable hour, which is good. But on the other hand, you would expect to get your morning coffee, but good luck because most of them didn't open till like late in the morning. So making a bank account, my gosh, like, okay, so we only get 8 personal hours for the whole contract year. And I probably spent half of them trying to get a bank account set up. You can only get one if you have a job, and you have to verify all these different things. And I had to have my co-teacher help me several times. But once it's set up, it was pretty neat because you got like this little book which you could log into your ATM from there. Logging into it online was really difficult because you had to download a certificate onto that computer to do any online banking or purchasing. So that was a challenge. I just don't think it's possible to do some of this stuff without getting help from somebody. Like the bank is not catered to expats like other things are. Like you can figure out the subway. You can figure out how to get food reasonably well, but you will not figure out banking without someone's extensive help. And I don't know if it's this hard to get a bank account in other countries, but yeah, it's super hard. You have to literally have a job to get an open bank account. And I still have my bank card, and I hope to use it when I go back to Korea. Don't have any money in it, but yeah, we would not be able to get one open unless we got another job there. There's no way. And then you can't use and then everything's a lot harder and less secure because you have to carry cash around more and
I don't even
stuff
know
like
if
that.
it will still be open by the time we get back.
Well, I went there less than 2 years ago, and mine still worked, and that was 3 years after leaving.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's possible to keep yours if you have your card with you, and all that. But how about you? How was your bank situation?
For sure, it was super complicated. I remember going to the bank many times and trying to figure things out. I initially had my co-teacher help me set up the accounts to transfer money home and all of that. But I do remember I had many encounters where for some reason my card got stuck in the machine. I was struggling so much, and I was by myself and there were other Koreans maybe nearby, but then I tried to get help and they just be like, oh, just call this number. I think one time I actually did have my card stuck, and then the next day I had to go back to the bank and get it back. I did have in my local bank, there were people that worked there that spoke English, but again, they weren't fluent, or it was still a struggle, right, to communicate with them and to get them to help me. But I just remember definitely a lot of work.
I would say the bank I went to is pretty modest. I don't know, in the US, like a lot of the banks can be quite opulent or quite extravagant sometimes, but this bank was pretty bare bones, but the ATM machine worked pretty well and you could transfer money to people really easily. You just needed a code and you could send money to someone right through the ATM. So that was kind of neat. It would directly go into their bank account, and that's not something I remember doing at all in America. I had to use PayPal, so that was a nice feature to just directly send the money to their account if needed. It was kind of a bummer. You only got 8 personal hours, and there's all these things you had to do. So it wasn't really like you got any personal hours because you had to use all those to do the various immigration things you were required to do, or to get your bank account open. So I kind of wish that didn't count.
You know what?
That kind of thing.
That is all part of the experience, right? When you think about it, it's like, wow, like going to a new country, being on our own, not speaking the language, the little things like ordering food or opening a bank account, like buying groceries, using the subway, say a taxi, little things makes it so hard. Like you feel like you're just born. So I think that's what makes it so challenging. But also at the same time, every time you go through that struggle and you're like, whoa, I feel like I've grown a lot.
Yeah, definitely. There was a great sense of accomplishment, and over time it got easier. Things got easier. Another culture thing that kind of felt so strange and stuck with me was the bowing. We had to bow when we met someone for the first time, or show respect. In America, or USA, we shake hands. We say, hello, but we don't bow ever. So that was something that I had to get used to for sure.
Mm-hmm.
It's just kind of a quick, little thing, but it did feel a little strange for sure. I don't know. What do you think? What do you think about the bowing?
Yeah, the bowing part was, it's so funny because like we do it for the respect of like the elderly and authority figures. And I remember, say, in a school setting, how kids will always bow to us, and it was something that I picked up, and I just started bowing to everyone. And even my kids, like they would bow to me, and I would unconsciously bow back, like I wouldn't even
Yeah.
realize it, right? And then I realized that throughout the year, I just started bowing to everyone, right? And it's interesting because I felt like, even though I definitely immersed myself a lot into the Korean culture and everything, but that was the one thing that I really picked up.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you even
Mhm.
bow when you came back to
Yeah, for
Canada? Or
sure.
you like doing?
I did too. Did you?
Yeah, I did a bit too. Yeah, I could. It
That's
was
so
just
funny.
natural.
I know. It's kind of funny. Um, but yeah, like, how about your experience with like the food at the cafeteria? Did you experience
Yeah. Oh,
anything?
cafeteria was okay. So we had one entree option, which was hit or miss, and then you had rice, and then some side dishes, and then a tea or whatever. The teachers had their own little food station area, and then the students had students had a separate one, and the teachers all ate together, and then students would eat together based on their class. So they
Mhm.
didn't sit with their friends, they didn't sit with their girlfriends or boyfriend or whatever.
Yeah, it's
They had
true.
to sit with their class that they were their homeroom class. They were together the
Mhm.
whole day. That would have drove
Mhm.
me crazy. Like if my best friend is in another class and I can't sit with my best friend. So what happened was they normally would eat very quickly,
Yeah, they
and then
do.
they would go and play with their friends for about an hour. An hour, I think it was like an hour to an hour and a half long. It was a
That
very
long?
long, yes, it was a very long lunch break. And
Oh yeah, I guess
there's
it depends
very,
how fast you eat, right? If you eat really fast, you have more time to play with your
yeah,
friends.
you have more time to play. So they ate very quick,
Mhm.
and also they didn't get to eat with their friends unless they were friends with their classmates. They didn't talk too much. They would just eat and then go, and they'd have an hour and a half long break. It was probably the longest break they got the whole day because a
Hmm.
lot of them would
Yeah.
do
Oh
tutoring after
yeah.
school.
True.
So it was a social hour,
Mhm.
and I loved it. I ended up joining the teachers basketball team during that
Oh.
time. We'd
Okay.
play with the student team and all that. So that was fun. We might go into that a little bit more later, but
Yeah.
then after we ate, there was no like drinks. So you would go put your tray away, and then you would go to the drinking station, the canteen in a way, and then you would drink a water. Everyone would drink a water and then go play is what they would do.
Mhm.
So the last thing they would do is
That's
kind of wash everything down, and they would go out.
that's really
So
interesting when you said that they don't, for your experience, that there was no drinks available while you're eating. Because for me,
yeah.
we actually did. We had water.
Oh.
We got to bring water with us,
Yeah, like
like
it,
to the
it was
table.
it wasn't like way out of the way because
Uh
for
huh.
us we could do that, but it was way out of the
Okay.
way. So most people didn't. Yeah,
Okay.
that might depend on the school then or something.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But I would definitely say that I was surprised how healthy the lunches were,
Oh yeah. Oh
because
yeah.
we definitely had like kimchi every day.
Yeah.
How
Oh
about you?
yeah.
Yeah, and also just like the different sections, like there's kimchi, there's rice, and there's soup, right? And then
Yeah.
other maybe snacks. So it varies like from day to day, but generally very healthy for the kids. So do you know how there's the Korean purple rice with beans?
Yeah. The
Yeah,
purple rice.
yeah,
Yeah.
another fan of that. I think for me, like the lunches are great, like they're healthy and they're good. But I find that because it's also there's a little bit like spicy food too, right? Like
It
some of it
was.
is
Yeah.
spicy, and I couldn't really handle spicy food. I only handle a little bit, and I don't really have a preference for it. So it was difficult, but I mean it was still good.
Right, because you have one option for the entree, and sometimes it was very spicy, and if
Yeah.
you couldn't eat it, then you would have to eat your rice, your soup, and your side dishes,
Yes.
and you'd probably be a little hungry unless you wanted to eat a ton of rice. So without any sauces or any sort of soy sauce or nothing like that. So I lost a lot of weight just because of those school lunches.
Oh, really?
Not even exercising. I lost weight just because, yeah, I'd have a rather unhealthy dinner, but the lunches were so healthy. Yeah, I lost
Wait,
a decent
but you
amount
could
of weight.
handle spicy food, right?
Yeah, but sometimes they would have things that I didn't like because it was like seafood related stuff, and I'm pretty picky about seafood. So,
Okay.
but overall, the food was good most days. My favorite lunch was definitely Korean
Oh, I love that
curry.
too. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and
Yeah.
I actually made it the other day, so
Oh, nice.
I brought that back with me. But yeah, curry was the best. So yeah, there was definitely food I liked. It was super healthy and it was really cheap. I think it was like maybe $3 a meal max out of your salary. They would deduct it.
Oh,
So
I didn't know
yeah.
that.
Oh really? Yeah, they probably
Yeah.
did it from yours too.
Oh,
But
well. Oh, yeah,
but
I think, yeah, okay.
very affordable, very
Yeah, very
reasonable.
affordable
So overall, it
though.
was good. But if you didn't like the entree that day, kind of tough luck because that's your only option.
Okay.
So, but yeah, and then there had a lot of. It was very clean. It was good overall. Picky eaters, or if you have very specific dietary restrictions, would probably have to skip the entree a few times. But
Yeah.
they do typically have a list of what's on the menu. So if you could go over that with the co-teacher, you could probably figure out what you're going to do that day. I found refuge, and there was a convenience store right outside the school gate that I would sneak out and go to if the entree
Oh,
wasn't
wow.
my favorite that day. It was literally like
Yeah.
less than a minute walk away. So I would get a Snickers if I was starving, but that was rare. It was just, it was octopus that day, and I was like, nah. Then I would. Did they ever bring snacks to your teacher lounge?
Yeah.
Okay.
We had so many snacks during
Yeah.
our breaks and in the office.
Yeah.
Like, were always eating all day.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
Right.
too?
So if
Yeah.
you didn't have a lot of lunch, there would be various like fruit or
Yeah.
milk, which is like rice cake, hard rice cake. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
There was food in that sense too.
In terms of birthdays, did you guys celebrate birthdays in the office?
Yeah, they didn't. No, we did
No?
not.
No,
Yeah.
just because there was a couple of times where the teacher in the office had a birthday, and I remember this one time they bought a cake for someone, and this was very shocking for me because they didn't have any plates or any other utensils. They just handed out the chopsticks for everyone, right?
Oh.
So then they handed out chopsticks, and there was no plates or anything, and they were just like, okay, dig in. And then I think my face was like, what? Like, what is going on? So then I watched them, like, everyone's just digging in with the chopsticks. And then they're like, Tina, have some. And I'm just like, it took like maybe 2 bites from, the area that was not touched yet. And then I'm like, okay, I'm done. So I was just like very surprised because what we would do back home is we would cut the cake and then we would,
Put in
feast them
plates. Yeah.
and it's like I was thinking, okay, yeah, in Asian cultures, like we generally like to share and we might have like dishes, right? Different dishes, and everyone kind of uses a chopstick to, put it on their plate. But even back home with family, a lot of times or with other people, we would have like a serving fork or utensil, and then we'll put it in our plate. So like this was very shocking for me because I've never done this with a cake, right? So that was my experience.
Yeah, I had that similar experience with ice cream. I was in college, and there's some Korean exchange students, and they said, "Want to have ice cream together?" And they just brought out the carton, and we all got a spoon, and we just dug in without bowls or anything. So yeah, that is surprising. Yeah, I don't like it, but I just go with it, just do it anyway. Yeah, and just kind of push through because I'm like, I don't want them to be uncomfortable, I guess. So I just sort of push through it.
Also, like another thing that I noticed is that how often they brush their teeth. Like, I don't know if this is something that's normal, but I find that they have great hygiene and they brush their teeth multiple times a day, or maybe it's like after they eat. Generally after they eat.
Yeah,
And
even like snacks too. So
yeah,
like,
so I don't know,
so they
is
bring a
that,
toothbrush and
yeah.
toothpaste to work,
Mm-hmm.
and everyone has theirs, and they,
Yeah.
yeah, after lunch or a snack, they just, yeah.
So that's, yeah, like you notice that too. And sometimes I'm like, oh, maybe because also like when you think about it, we are teachers, right? We are standing in front of the classroom with many eyes, pairs of eyes watching us, many classes that we teach. So of course you don't want to have like food stuck in your teeth, right? But then I think in general
Yeah.
they do have really good hygiene and brush their teeth after they eat all the time, I
Yeah,
think.
personal hygiene. Yeah, there's very
Yeah.
good personal hygiene. Uh, yeah, everyone is, there's no like, yeah, scruffiness involved. Overall, yeah, it's yeah,
Mhm.
I still feel like the clothes the teachers wore were more, it's definitely not formal though at our school. It
Oh,
was
okay.
not, kind of, it could have been business casual at the most, but sometimes it was like clean, but it wasn't like, there was some t-shirts going on,
Mhm.
or it wasn't always like
Mhm.
really what I expected to be more spiffy, but it wasn't always spiffy. It depends on the day.
Mhm.
So yeah, so I was kind of relieved. I think part of it was because of there not being an air condition, central heating and cooling.
Mhm.
In this school, there was like a little machine in the corner that you could use to cool or heat the room, but the regulations for activating those were very strict. So in the summer, it had to be almost like 97 Fahrenheit before they would turn it on. And in the winter, it had to be below freezing before they would turn the heater on. It would have to be right at freezing.
Mhm.
So it was like, it didn't feel like a modern building. I felt like I was camping, or so that was really a culture shock to me, is just the lack of central heating and cooling in
Right.
schools.
For
And
sure. Yeah.
the windows being open all the time,
Yeah.
even when we're trying to retain heat in the building in the winter, then you
Mhm.
have open windows. So
Yeah.
that was very uncomfortable.
As we were brainstorming this, there was just this long list as you all hear, and more things came up, and we will have more things to talk about in our future episodes. We're going to touch upon more about our neighborhood and different areas and things that you can do in Daejeon, as well as some advice that we can give you in terms of how to deal with culture shock and interact with local Koreans, as well as how to make friends.
Yes, friendship 101.
Okay, thank you everyone for tuning in.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in, and we'll
Okay,
see you next time. Yep.
all right, bye.